There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
Do you recognize this game? It's called Hungry Shark, one of the greatest mobile games of all time. It's also the backdrop of my laptop. In the game, you are a shark, and your goal is to attack and consume as much as you possibly can, whether that be crabs, bottles of alcohol, seagulls, or humans. Now, you probably recognize this movie poster, and probably the two-note chromatic theme, ominously alluding to a malicious presence beneath the water in Spielberg's 1975 record-breaking film Jaws. Jaws has stood the test of time. The sensationalization of this apex predator somehow still remaining a major icon of American film culture. It begins with Jaws, but then it goes on through The Shallows to Shark Week, the Sharknado franchise. Yeah. Games like Hungry Shark and films like Sharknado 5, Global Swarming, feel unimportant.
And don't get me wrong, I don't take Hungry Shark that seriously. But even these examples of seemingly harmless entertainment media reflect disturbing misconceptions created and perpetuated by media portrayals of sharks, and the much bigger impact seemingly meaningless media can actually have on our perceptions, and therefore our actions. There's a real and very significant problem here, and that is that sharks might be the apex predators in the ocean, but they're largely helpless against the far more ruthless predators who are watching this. As someone born in the early 2000s, I never lived in a pre-Jaws world. Sharks haven't always been viewed as the monsters we see them as today. Sure, sailors would steer clear of them, but sharks weren't seen as the enemy any more than a mountain lion or any other apex predator. Until relatively recently, we didn't call shark bites attacks, but rather accidents or encounters. And even then, they didn't get much coverage in the news. Shark-related injuries and fatalities have always been, and continue to be, extremely uncommon. How uncommon? You are 7,000 times more likely to injure yourself in your own bathroom than be injured by a shark. You're more likely to be killed by bees, wasps, or snakes, or a lightning strike, or from a vending machine falling on you, or from a flying champagne cork. You're much more likely to be killed or injured while driving to the beach, or at the beach be injured by jellyfish, sunburn, or stepping on a sharp seashell. And we're not afraid of seashells, so what created this idiotic fear when we step into the water? When did sharks become attackers? The theory of the rogue or problem shark, a shark intentionally set on human flesh, emerged in 1916 after a string of shark attacks occurred on the Jersey coast. In response to the unexpected tragedy, fishermen caught and killed any shark they came across, and supposedly found a shark with multiple human remains in its stomach. Spooky. However, since then, the theory of the rogue shark has been debunked, and it's been proven a myth that one shark was responsible for all the 1916 attacks. But the mindset of attack over accident hasn't gone away. The string of attacks inspired Peter Benchley to write his novel, Jaws, which was picked up by the little-known director Steven Spielberg and turned into a cinema staple. Since 1916, the media has perpetuated the myth that shark bites are intended to harm, when, in reality, they are a rare misstep due to the animal's curious nature. 90% of shark bites are not fatal. Let's just say that if the shark really intended to attack, most people wouldn't survive to tell the tale. Even so, Jaws led to dozens of knockoffs, a few of which I mentioned before. Many of them are kitschy with poor special effects. They're fun to watch, but no one takes them seriously. And then there's programs like Shark Week, which claim to be educational but still perpetuate the stereotype of sharks as uncontrollable or ravenous. Okay, so sharks are getting a bad rep in the media. So what? Why should we care about how some kitschy TV show portrays these animals? Coming into this essay, I thought this topic would be funny and light, but I quickly learned it's not so funny. There's something much bigger going on here. Our media consumption is far from harmless. It's changing our planet as we know it. Worldwide, a third of shark species are endangered. Why? As Ocean Ramsey says in her TED Talk, How Sharks Affect Us All, some of it is due to silly things like souvenirs and pharmaceuticals.
Some of it is due to men and their inferiority complexes, I'm guessing. The shark.
80% of longlining is bycatch and most of it is sharks. And then there's calling, which is probably the least intelligent reaction a country can have to an adverse shark-human interaction.
But the number one killer of sharks globally? A bowl of soup.
Yep, shark fin soup. This Chinese soup traditionally served as a status symbol, a symbol of wealth and prestige being served at government banquets, weddings, and other important events. However, with the rise of the middle class, the soup is in higher and higher demand as upper middle class families strive to prove themselves. Increased demand for shark fins has also led to the development of the billion-dollar shark fin trade. The shark fin trade relies on shark finning, which involves catching sharks, cutting off their fins, and releasing them back into the water to die slowly and painfully. This practice is of course cruel, but feelings aside, it's contributed to a 90 to 99% reduction in shark numbers across the oceans. And this is obviously a huge problem. We kill anywhere from 100 to 273 million sharks each year. And sharks kill what? One person every other year? Sharks are being fished past the point they can replenish. They are a K-strategy species, which means, unlike bony fishes, they grow slowly, reproduce slowly, and live a long life. Some experts believe white sharks live 40 to 50 years. What this means, though, is that sharks are particularly vulnerable to overexploitation, and they aren't going to recover from our overfishing anytime soon. Not only do countries have virtually no regulations over the amount of sharks taken, we have no idea what kinds of sharks are being fished. There's also lots we still don't know about sharks. Up until a few decades ago, we had no idea where they migrated. White sharks, perhaps the most prominently featured in horror films, we've never even seen them reproduce. Sharks have lived on our planet for 400 million years, through 5 mass extinctions. These ancient and highly evolved animals were around not only before dinosaurs, but before trees and the rings of Saturn. Our ocean ecosystems developed around this keystone species for hundreds of millions of years. So what happens when they disappear? We have no idea. What we do know is that it's not good. The ocean is extremely complex and mysterious. Unlike some land ecosystems, the ocean's food chains are thickly tangled together, meaning the depletion of one species not only affects species immediately around it, but ripples across the entire oceanic food web. Because sharks have existed in our oceans for so long, it's very hard to predict what our oceans would look like without them. Sharks play an extremely important ecological role. Not only do they regulate the population of countless other species, they serve as doctors or white blood cells of the ocean, preying on weak and sick individuals below them in the food chain and ensuring species diversity that keeps the ocean healthy. And believe it or not, the ocean's health is integral to the health of our environment, our economies, my health, and your health. 70 to 80% of the air we rely on to continue living comes from our oceans. Sharks play a crucial role in marine ecosystems, and if they die out, their plant-eating prey proliferate. Decreased vegetation leads to increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, which accelerates climate change. Either directly or indirectly, we all rely on our oceans. Our lives, our futures are interconnected. So our shark fishing not only harms sharks and ocean species, it harms us. So right now you might be asking, what does any of this have to do with Hungry Shark? So glad you asked. We're in a bad situation right now, and it's not just shark fin soup that's the issue. Conservation efforts have been made to help stop shark finning and bycatch, but not enough. Why? Because quite frankly, no one cares. Hannah Rudd makes a great point about this in her TED Talk, Why Sharks Are Not the Enemy.
How we think about these animals is really important about whether or not we're willing to invest in their conservation. Psychology plays a really important role in our desire to protect certain animals. We often look at dolphins and penguins and whales as being at the forefront of conservation campaigns because they make us feel warm and fuzzy inside. We have this emotional connection with these animals that makes us want to protect them. But does sharks make you feel warm and fuzzy inside? I mean, unless you're someone like me, probably not. But their demise in the global ocean is something that we all really need to be terribly alarmed about.
While it's easy to tell that the individuals we see in the ocean today are very different from what Hollywood would like us to believe, Hollywood has certainly had a significant effect on our perception of sharks, and our perceptions have real-world consequences. It affects our willingness to contribute to shark conservation, but also has much more obvious repercussions, like after the release of Jaws, when fishermen thought catching a trophy shark was a way to showcase their bravery, and tournaments began popping up for catching sharks, a cruel and harmful tradition that continues in many coastal communities to this day. In 2022, Steven Spielberg himself came out with an apology for their harmful response to Jaws, and the author of the book, Peter Benchley, made a similar statement, now known to be a devoted conservationist and advocate for sharks. Peter Benchley teamed up with a National Geographic photographer to make his TV special making a case for shark conservation almost 25 years ago. He recognized that the government efforts weren't going to be enough, that sharks needed the public on their side, which meant changing their portrayal in the media. How is it that a fictional horror novel like Jaws, intended for fun and entertainment, can decimate an entire species? Clearly, the media we consume, even lightly, can have heavy impacts on the world. We see it over and over throughout history, propaganda, caricatures, scapegoating, whether it be an ethnic group, an religious group, a nationality, animals. Why do we keep creating and falling for the distorted realities we see on TV and read in books? We don't know for certain, but media psychologists suggest that it's part of a moral panic cycle. They suggest that society often overreacts to new media, proclaiming significant but often non-existent health crises, like man-eating sharks as a random example. Cohen, who initially proposed this theory on moral panic, believed societies respond to perceived crises by constructing folk devils who can be blamed for the panic. Sound familiar? This moral panic is then reported in the media, or conversely, the media creates a new societal belief that causes a moral panic. It's a cycle, meaning the media might simply accelerate the moral panic, like Sharknado, or actually create one, like Jaws. But we all know Jaws is fictional, so how in the world did it become real? In an article from the Social Science Quarterly, authors Adkins and Castle explore the impact entertainment media has on public opinion. They argue that a film like Jaws perhaps has the potential to alter public opinion more than, say, a documentary, precisely because it is fictitious, because it is perceived as entertainment. They suggest that popular movies we don't take seriously might be dangerous for that very reason. We don't think they carry a political message, and that's why we are susceptible to the political message they inevitably carry, even if that's something as extreme as the only good shark is a dead shark. Today's sharks have a bad rap, and that's rooted in the stereotyped and fictional media we consume. But what if we use media to rewire our societal perceptions, to share the truth? The media is a powerful force, so what if we use it to make positive change? The good news is we've already begun. Kids' media like Baby Shark are already reversing the narrative for the next generation, portraying sharks as fun and friendly. This reversal is powerful considering our historical relationship with these animals, but fun and friendly doesn't exactly sum up sharks in reality. Yes, they are playful, curious creatures that are scapegoated in the media, and they are apex predators just like us. But they're not us. They're also not monsters, and they're also not golden retrievers. They are awesome, elegant animals that deserve our respect, not our fear. You don't even need to like them to recognize the important role sharks play in our world. I'm not telling you to jump in the water right now and swim with them, but killing sharks is clearly not the answer. Media surrounding sharks tends to reflect this kind of polarization, sharks as demons or as teddy bears. Do they really have to be one or the other? Why can't the media recognize sharks as sharks? There are examples of this, but few and far between, like children's books like If Sharks Disappear, which not only portrays sharks realistically but educates kids and parents on the urgent need for shark conservation. This might seem like a small step, but it could be just the beginning of a changing tide. A tide we've succeeded in changing before. Yes, we've done this before, with another sea creature you might be familiar with, whales. It wasn't actually that long ago that we vilified whales, when people believed the narrative of Moby Dick. But our association with these gentle giants has changed entirely. Whaling was a major global industry, pushing whales to the edge of extinction. Sound familiar? But we turned the tide on Moby Dick. Understanding their role in our ecosystem, we decided to save the whales. So why not save the sharks? Thank you.